They thought she was weak. They thought her silence meant she gave up. For 3 days, Maria sat in that cold courtroom. She watched her rich ex-husband and his mean lawyer tell lies about her. She didn't yell. She didn't fight back. She just watched. Everyone thought it was over. The jury, the people watching, even her own lawyer. But they didn't know Maria wasn't silent because she was scared. She was silent because she was waiting. Waiting for one special question that would destroy everything he built. When Judge Martinez finally asked it, the answer didn't just end a marriage. It ended a kingdom. You won't believe what she was hiding. The big wooden doors of Courtroom 5A in Los Angeles felt very heavy. The air conditioner made a low humming sound. Robert Williams fixed his expensive Italian suit and smiled a little. He didn't look like a man fighting. He looked like a man who already won. Robert was 42 years old. He was famous in the drug business. His picture was on Forbes magazine. People said his handshake was worth millions. Next to him sat his lawyer, Charles Drake. People called him the Butcher. Drake didn't just win cases. He crushed people until nothing was left. Behind them sat Jessica, Robert's girlfriend. She was 24 years old, wearing a cream dress, holding a designer purse with white knuckles. On the other side sat Maria. She wore a simple gray dress. Her hair was pulled back tight. She looked tired, not crazy tired, but deep tired. Like someone who swam against strong water for too long. Her hands sat still on the table. "Mr. Drake, you can give your closing speech now," Judge Martinez said. The judge was almost 70 years old. He didn't like drama. But his courtroom had become a place of pain for the past week. Drake stood up. "Thank you, Your Honor. The facts are clear. My client, Mr. Williams, gives his children a good, rich, smart home. He has money, time, and love." Drake walked slowly. His voice got quiet. "But Maria, we feel sorry for her money problems. Problems she made herself. We can't ignore how unstable she is, how emotional." Robert nodded like he was sad. "It was perfect acting. We heard from the nannies," Drake said. "We heard from the house workers. They said Maria is distant, distracted, maybe even a bad mother. Is this good for 2 young children? A small apartment in a bad neighborhood with a mother who won't move on." Maria didn't move. She stared at the seal of California above the judge's head. People in the room whispered. The news people were there. They wanted to see the wife fall. They already wrote their headlines. "Williams wins, sad end for quiet wife." She hasn't said one word. Jessica whispered to her friend, loud enough for people to hear. "She knows she's a bad mother." Robert leaned to Drake. "Finish this. I have a meeting at 4. "It's already done," Drake whispered. "Look at her. She's broken." But Maria wasn't broken. She was counting. The afternoon went on. Maria's lawyer was Emily Chun. The court gave her to Maria for free. Emily was young and scared. She looked lost. "Your Honor," Emily said, her voice shaking, "my client loves her children. The bad things they say come from workers Robert pays. That's not fair." "Objection," Drake said. He didn't even stand up. "The workers promised to tell the truth." "Okay," Judge Martinez sighed. "Miss Chun, unless you have real proof, move on." Emily looked at Maria with desperate eyes. "Maria, you have to give me something. You said you had a plan. We're losing everything. The money, the house, the kids. He's destroying you." Maria turned her head slowly. Her eyes were bright green. For the first time in days, they had fire. "Not yet, Emily. Wait for the money talk." "The money," Emily whispered. "We already talked about money. He hid it all. We can't prove it." "Just wait," Maria said softly. Now they talked about dividing the money. This was Robert's game. He built an empire. But on paper, he looked almost broke. Robert went to the witness stand. He looked humble and successful. "Mr. Williams," Drake asked smoothly, "can you tell the court about your cash money?" Robert sighed sadly. "It's been a hard year. The drug business got hit. Most of my money is stuck in stocks I can't sell for 5 years. My cash is small, barely enough for lawyers and house bills. I offered Maria $5,000 a month. That's very fair. $5,000 a month. It was an insult. It wouldn't even pay rent near their children's school." "What about the secret accounts Maria mentioned?" Drake asked. Robert laughed. "Fiction. Make-believe. I'm an American businessman. I pay my taxes. I keep my money where I can see it. Maria always had a big imagination. She thinks my business trips to the Cayman Islands were for banking. I went there to look at retreat centers. Nothing more." Judge Martinez nodded and wrote notes. He looked at Maria. She was staring at Robert. Her face showed nothing, but her fingers tapped the table. Tap, tap, tap. Do you want to ask him questions, Miss Chun? The judge asked. Emily stood up. She opened her mouth, but Maria's hand shot out and grabbed Emily's wrist. No, Maria said. Her voice was clear and loud in the quiet room. Judge Martinez frowned. Ms. Rodriguez, you're speaking out of turn. Are you telling your lawyer not to ask questions? Yes, Maria said. She stood up. She wasn't tall, but right then, she seemed huge. Actually, Your Honor, I want to speak for myself now. Drake laughed. Your Honor, this isn't normal. She has a lawyer. I have the right to talk about my children and these money lies, Maria said steadily. And I think Mr. Williams forgot one very small, very important thing about our marriage. Robert rolled his eyes. Here we go? The crazy talk. Judge Martinez looked interested. He was bored of Drake's smooth talking. He wanted to hear what the quiet woman had to say. Okay, but be careful, Miss Rodriguez. This is a court, not a therapy room. What is this thing he forgot? Maria walked around the table. She didn't go to the witness stand. She walked to the center of the room, right in front of the judge. She turned her back on Robert. The thing he forgot, Maria said, is what I did for work before I was a housewife and mother. Robert frowned. He had to think about it. He met Maria at a charity party 10 years ago. She was volunteering. He thought she came from old money or was trying to climb up. He never really asked. I was an archivist, Maria said. For the State Department. Drake laughed. So what? You filed papers. Congratulations. An archivist who specialized in finding deleted data and secret messages, Maria said. Her voice got colder. I didn't just file papers. I found things people tried very hard to erase. The room went completely silent. Robert's smile disappeared for just a second. For 10 years, Maria continued, walking slowly. I played the role Robert wanted. The quiet wife. The trophy. I let him think I didn't understand his business. I let him think I was too busy with the children to notice when he changed his passwords. I let him think I was stupid. She turned to face Robert. But I remember everything I see, Robert. And I always back up computer files. Objection, Drake shouted, jumping up. This is an ambush. There's no evidence. Actually, Maria interrupted, pulling a small black USB drive from her dress pocket. I gave this to the bailiff this morning in a sealed envelope. It's marked for emergency review about lying under oath. Judge Martinez's eyebrows went up. He looked at the bailiff, who nodded and handed him a brown envelope. You stayed quiet, Judge Martinez said, opening the envelope. You let him lie under oath. I needed him to say it on record, Maria said. I needed him to say under penalty of lying that the Cayman accounts don't exist. Because if I showed this earlier, he would have settled. He would have made up a story. But now he committed a crime in front of you. Robert's face went pale. He leaned toward Drake. What's on that drive? I don't know, Drake whispered, sweat on his forehead. You told me she was nobody. Judge Martinez plugged the drive into his laptop. The courtroom waited. The silence was thick and heavy. The judge clicked some files. His eyes got wide. He fixed his glasses. He scrolled and scrolled. He looked up, his face angry. Mr. Williams, the judge said, his voice dangerously low. According to these bank papers, which look real, you have $75 million in an account called Jessica Properties, LLC. Everyone gasped. All eyes turned to Jessica. She screamed and dropped her purse. I didn't know. He just asked me to sign papers. Sit down. Drake snapped at her. But that's not the important question, Maria said, cutting through the noise. The money is just money. You can punish him for that. But there's something else on that drive, Your Honor. Folder 3, the sound files. Robert stood up. Stop this. This is a legal recording. Husband-wife privilege. Not when the recording catches a crime against a child, Maria said calmly. Judge Martinez held up a hand, making Robert be quiet. Mr. Williams, sit down or I'll put you in chains. Miss Rodriguez, what is this unexpected question you mentioned? Maria took a deep breath. This was it. The moment she waited 3 terrible days for. Ask him, Maria said, pointing a shaking finger at her ex-husband. Ask him where he was on the night of October 14th, the night our son Daniel ended up in the emergency room with a broken arm. Robert froze. He looked terrified. The cockiness was gone. October 14th, Judge Martinez asked, looking at papers. The report says the child fell downstairs while the nanny was watching him. Ask him, Maria said again. Judge Martinez looked at Robert. Mr. Williams, where were you on October 14th? Robert opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at Drake. Drake looked away. I was at a party. The Metro charity dinner, Robert stammered. There are photos. Maria shook her head. Play the file, Your Honor. The file named October 14th, baby monitor. Judge Martinez clicked the file. Static filled the courtroom. Then a door slamming. Then Robert's voice. Not smooth, but drunk and angry. I told you to get out of my way, you little brat. A child crying. Daddy, no. Stop. A loud thud. A horrible crack. Silence. Then Jessica's voice on the recording. Robert. Oh my God. You pushed him. He's not moving. Robert. We have to call 911. Robert's voice again, cold and sober. No. Call the nanny. Tell her if she doesn't say he fell, she'll never work in this town again. Fix this, Jessica. I'm going to the party. The recording ended. The silence in the courtroom was total. It was deafening. It was the sound of a life ending. Jessica was crying into her hands. Robert was gripping the table so hard his knuckles were white. Judge Martinez slowly closed the laptop. He took off his glasses. He looked at Robert with pure disgust. Mr. Williams, the judge said, his voice shaking with anger. I've heard enough. The silence broke like shattering glass. This is fake, Robert Williams screamed. His face twisted with rage. He lunged at the table, knocking files onto the floor. She faked the audio. That's made by AI. I demand you test it. Judge Martinez slammed his gavel down hard. Bang, bang, bang. Sit down, Mr. Williams, the judge roared. His voice was so loud and scary that people in the gallery flinched. You are in a court of law, not your office where you can bully people. Charles Drake, the butcher, looked like he swallowed hot rocks. He stepped away from his client. Your Honor, Drake stammered. All his smooth confidence was gone. I need a break. I need to talk with my client about this new. There will be no break. Judge Martinez cut him off. His eyes narrowed. He looked at the laptop, then at crying Jessica, and finally at Robert. The court has problems. He mysteriously got the moment he went to jail, got him released to house arrest. The bail was set at $10 million. He paid it in an hour using secret cryptocurrency that Maria hadn't found yet. Robert returned to his penthouse at the Platinum Tower in downtown Los Angeles on a rainy Thursday evening. The ride home in the black SUV was silent. His driver, usually chatty, didn't look at him. Robert sat in the back with a glass of scotch from the car's bar. His hands were shaking. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was angry. A cold, sharp anger. She embarrassed me, he thought, watching the city lights blur past. She humiliated me in front of Martinez, in front of the press. He checked his phone. The stock for Williams Pharmaceuticals had dropped 18% in 2 days. The board of directors called an emergency meeting for Friday morning. He had to fix this. He had to control the story. The car stopped at the private entrance. He swept inside, ignoring the doorman, and took the elevator to the 50th floor. The penthouse was dark. He frowned. Usually the lights were on. Jessica, he called out. No answer. He walked into the living room, throwing his keys on the marble counter. Jessica, I told you to have dinner ready. I've been eating jail food for 2 days. Still silence. He walked up the floating stairs to the master bedroom. The door was open. He stepped inside and froze. The room was empty. The closet doors were open wide, the hangers bare. The jewelry box was gone. The wall safe was open and empty. On the bed was a single piece of paper. Robert walked over and picked it up. It was a note in Jessica's loopy, childish handwriting. Robert, I saw the news. They're saying you might get 10 years for child abuse. I can't be a prison wife. It's not my brand. Also, the feds came by. They asked about the LLC. I told them everything, Robert. I told them you made me sign papers. I told them about the Switzerland accounts too. I made a deal for immunity. Don't look for me. I'm in Paris. J. Robert crushed the note in his fist and screamed, a raw sound of pure rage. He threw a crystal lamp across the room. It shattered against the wall. Traitor, he howled. Useless gold-digging traitor. He paced the room, breathing hard. Okay. Jessica is gone. Good. She was a problem anyway. I still have the company. I still have the core patents. As long as I control the patents for Neurovance, the Alzheimer's drug launching next quarter, I'm untouchable. The board won't dare fire me. I am the company. He needed to check the secure servers. He needed to make sure the research files were locked so Maria couldn't get them. He ran to his home office and turned on his big computer. He typed in his password. Access denied. He frowned. He typed it again. Access denied. What the hell? He pulled out his phone and called the IT director, Gary. Gary, why am I locked out? Robert barked. Long pause. Mr. Williams. Oh, sir, your access has been removed. Removed? By who? I am the CEO. By the acting chairwoman, sir. Robert froze. Acting chairwoman? We don't have a chairwoman. We have a chairman. Old man Thompson. Mr. Thompson quit yesterday, sir, Gary said, voice shaking. The majority shareholder called for restructuring. She made herself chairwoman this morning. She? Robert whispered, cold dread seeping in. Who is she? I can't see the full name, sir. It just says EK Holdings. Eck. Robert whispered. Maria Rodriguez. Robert dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor. How? How could she be the majority shareholder? I own 51% of the stock. Unless. He remembered something Maria said in court. I didn't just file papers. I found things. 10 years ago, when he started the company, he used money from an anonymous angel investor to buy out his early partners. He never knew who the investor was. The deal was done through a blind trust in Singapore. He assumed it was some oil tycoon or venture capital fund. He scrambled to his filing cabinet, tearing through old papers until he found the original company documents. He flipped to the part about early funding. Investor, the Phoenix Trust. He had never looked into the Phoenix Trust. He just took the money. He ran back to the computer. He couldn't log into the company server, but he could check public records. He searched Phoenix Trust ownership. The screen loaded. Trustee, Maria Rodriguez. Beneficiary, the Williams children. Robert fell back into his leather chair, air leaving his lungs. She funded him. All those years ago, when they first dated, when he thought she was a broke student. She had money. No, not money. Information. He remembered now. Her father. Her father wasn't a nobody. Her father was Alexander Rodriguez, the genius mathematician who designed trading algorithms for Wall Street in the 90s. He died mysteriously with no will. Everyone thought he died broke. Maria had the money all along. She bought 40% of my company before we were even married. And with the 15% she gets in the divorce, she owns him. She owned him from the very beginning. The phone on his desk rang. It was the landline. Only a few people had that number. He picked it up slowly. Hello. Hello, Robert. It was her. Her voice was calm, without the fear she used to fake. Maria, he breathed. You were the angel investor. I believed in the science, Robert, she said. I believed Neurovance could save lives. I didn't know the man running the company was poison. You can't do this, he said, trying to find solid ground. I built this company. I am Williams Pharmaceuticals. Not anymore, Maria said. The board meeting is tomorrow at 9 a.m. I suggest you bring a box for your stuff. Security will walk you out if you stay. I'll fight you, Robert shouted. I'll sue you for fraud. You hid money. I hid nothing, Maria replied smoothly. The trust was always public record. You were just too arrogant to read the fine print. You were too busy staring at yourself in the mirror to notice who was paying for the frame. I'm coming for you, Maria, he snarled. Come, she said. I'll be waiting in your chair. The line went dead. Friday morning came with gray, steady rain that washed over Los Angeles. The rain made the glass buildings look like they were crying. The headquarters of Williams Pharmaceuticals was a fortress of steel and glass in the financial district. The boardroom on the 40th floor had a big view of the Pacific Ocean, a view meant to scare anyone sitting across the huge oak table. At 8:55 a.m., the room was full. The board of directors sat in uncomfortable silence. There was Jonathan Thompson, the former chairman, looking pale and beaten. There was Linda Park, the representative for Asian markets, tapping her pen nervously on her tablet. There was Maxwell Carter, the CFO, who was sweating a lot despite the air conditioning. They were waiting. At 9 a.m. sharp, the double doors opened. Robert Williams walked in. He looked perfect. He spent 2 hours getting ready. His suit was sharp navy blue, his tie power red. He walked with the confidence of a man who refused to believe he was losing. Good morning, Robert announced, ignoring the tension. He walked to the head of the table. I trust we're all ready to discuss how to fix this recent PR problem. He reached for the leather chair at the head of the table. That seat is taken, Robert, a voice said from the corner. Robert spun around. Maria was standing by the window. She wasn't wearing the gray, worn-out dress from the courtroom. She was wearing a perfect black suit that fit her like armor. Her hair was down, falling in waves over her shoulders. She wore heels that clicked sharply on the floor as she walked toward him. "Maria?" Robert laughed. "This is a closed meeting. Security." He waved at the guard by the door. The guard, a man Robert employed for 5 years, didn't move. He stared straight ahead. "Security works for the company, Robert," Maria said, stopping a few feet from him. "And as of 8 a.m. this morning, I control 55% of the voting shares." She threw a thick document onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud. "What is this?" Robert sneered. "That," Linda Park spoke up, her voice shaking slightly, "is the motion to immediately fire you as CEO, citing the moral clause in your contract." Robert laughed. "Moral clause? Because of a family fight? Don't make me laugh. I made $400 million in revenue last year. You also stole $12 million. Maxwell Carter, the CFO, whispered. He looked at Robert with sorry eyes. "She found it, Robert. She found the routing numbers to the fake companies in Cyprus. She sent the file to all of us this morning." Robert froze. He looked at Maxwell. You betrayed me?" "I didn't have to," Maxwell said. "She had the logs. She had records of every keystroke from your laptop. She's had it for 6 months." Robert looked back at Maria. She was standing at the head of the table now, her hand resting on the back of the chair, his chair. "You watched me," Robert whispered. "All this time. You were in my house, sleeping in my bed, and you were spying on me." "I was protecting my children's future," Maria corrected. "You were draining the company dry to pay for your lifestyle and your girlfriend. You were risking FDA approval of Neurovance by cutting corners on safety testing to save money." "I saw those emails too." The room gasped. Faking safety data was a death sentence for a drug company. "That's a lie," Robert shouted. "Is it?" Maria pulled a remote from her pocket and pointed it at the wall screen. An email chain appeared. It was from Robert to the head of research. Subject: Clinical Trials Phase 3. From R. Williams. Body: I don't care about the side effects in the test group. Hide the nausea data. We need to launch by Q3 or the stock drops. Fix it. This," Maria said, pointing to the screen, "is why you're being fired. Not because you're a bad husband. Not because you're a bad father, though you are both. You're being fired because you're a fraud." She looked at the board. "All in favor of firing Robert Williams, effective immediately?" Every hand went up. Even Maxwell Carter raised his hand. Robert stared at them. His friends. His followers. "You can't do this," he whispered. "I am Williams Pharmaceuticals." "Not anymore," Maria said. "We're changing the name. Starting Monday, the company will be called Rodriguez Biosciences." She pointed to the door. "Get out." Robert stood there, shaking. His face turned bright red. He made fists with his hands. For a second, he looked like he might hit her, just like he hit Daniel. "Don't even think about it," a deep voice said. Robert turned. Standing behind Maria was a man he hadn't noticed. He was tall, wearing a simple suit, but stood like a soldier. "Who the hell are you?" Robert spat. "My name is Detective Garcia," the man said. "I'm with the Securities and Exchange Commission." He stepped forward, showing a badge and pulling out fresh handcuffs. "And this is an arrest warrant for securities fraud, stealing money, and corporate espionage." Robert looked from the handcuffs to Maria. She was sitting in the chair now. She looked comfortable. She looked powerful. "You planned this," Robert choked out. "You planned the timing. The court case. The board meeting. The SEC. I told you, Robert," Maria said, opening a file folder on the desk. "I'm an archivist. I like things organized." She didn't look up as the detective turned Robert around and cuffed him. She didn't watch as he was dragged out of the room, screaming curse words. She simply picked up a pen. "Now," Maria said to the shocked room of executives, "let's talk about the cleanup." 3 months passed since the boardroom takeover, but for Robert Williams, time became a meaningless loop of gray concrete and bright lights. He was being held at the Federal Detention Center in Terminal Island, waiting for trial. The bail for the SEC charges was set at $50 million. Money he couldn't pay because his money was frozen and his friends disappeared. He wore an orange jumpsuit now, so different from the Italian wool he used to wear. His hair, once perfectly styled, was growing out gray and patchy. He lost weight. "You have a visitor," the guard said roughly, banging on the bars. Robert sat up on his bed, a spark of hope in his chest. Drake? No. Drake quit. Jessica? Maybe she came back. A new lawyer? He was walked down the hallway, chains rattling around his ankles, into the visiting room. He sat behind thick plexiglass. Maria sat on the other side. She looked beautiful. She wore a simple white shirt and jeans, her hair loose. She looked 5 years younger than in the courtroom. She didn't look like a CEO or a winner. She just looked free. Robert grabbed the phone. You came, he said, voice rough. I knew you'd come. You still love me, don't you? Deep down. Maria picked up the phone slowly. Her face showed pity, which hurt Robert more than anger. I came to bring you this, Robert. She held up a paper to the glass. It was a drawing, a crude crayon drawing of a superhero dog fighting a green monster. Daniel drew it, Maria said. His therapist said it was a breakthrough. The green monster. That's you, Robert. Robert flinched. I'm his father. You can't turn him against me. I didn't have to, Maria said calmly. You did that when you broke his arm because you were late for a party. You did that when you yelled at him for existing. It was an accident, Robert hissed, leaning forward, his breath fogging the glass. Listen to me, Maria. We can make a deal. I know where the crypto keys are for the other wallet. The one you didn't find. There's $20 million there. I'll give it to you. Just tell the DA you made it bigger than it was. Tell them I was stressed. Get the charges reduced. Maria stared at him. You still don't get it, do you? I don't want your money. I have the company. I have my own money. And most importantly, I have my dignity. You can't run that company, Robert shouted. You're an archivist. A librarian. You don't know how to handle tough business people. The company is doing better than ever, Maria said, a small smile on her lips. We released the real safety data for Neurovance. The stock dropped at first, but then it went back up when people realized we were being honest. We have integrity now, Robert. Something you never had. Integrity doesn't buy yachts. No, Maria agreed. But it lets you sleep. I sleep very well at night, Robert. Do you? Robert slammed the phone against the metal counter. Get me out of here. You owe me. I gave you a life. You gave me a cage, Maria corrected. And I spent 10 years learning how to escape. She stood up. I won't visit again, Robert. The divorce was finished this morning. You didn't sign the papers, so the judge gave a default judgment. I have full custody. You have no visiting rights. A restraining order is in place for when, if, you get out. Wait. Robert panicked. Maria, please. I'm scared. The other inmates, they know I was rich. They know about the child abuse charge. They look at me like I'm prey. For a moment, Maria hesitated. She looked at the man she once promised to love. She saw the fear in his eyes, the pathetic terror of a bully who lost his power. I can't help you with that, Robert, she said softly. You built this world for yourself. You lied. You cheated. And you hurt weak people. Now you're in a place where the rules are different. Good luck. She hung up the phone. As she walked away, she could hear him screaming her name through the glass, a muffled, desperate sound that faded as the heavy steel door clicked shut behind her. 1 year later, the crystal chandeliers of the Beverly Hilton Hotel didn't just glow, they seemed to buzz with the energy of Los Angeles's rich and powerful people. It was so different from the cold, gray courtroom where Maria Rodriguez had stood exactly 1 year ago. Tonight, the air didn't smell of stale coffee and fear. It smelled of expensive perfume, aged champagne, and victory. The party for the Rodriguez Foundation for Domestic Recovery was the most wanted ticket of the season. The ballroom was a sea of tuxedos and fancy gowns, filled with faces that once turned away from Maria when she was just Robert Williams's quiet wife. Now they stretched their necks just to see her. Maria stood near the velvet entrance, smoothing her emerald green dress. It was a bold choice, a bright, living green that stood out against all the safe black dresses. She wasn't hiding in gray anymore. Mom, are you nervous? Maria looked down. Daniel was pulling her hand. At 8 years old, he looked handsome in a little tuxedo, his bow tie a bit crooked. But it wasn't the suit that made Maria's chest tight with emotion. It was how he stood. He stood tall, his eyes, once scared and watching for his father's anger, now bright and playful. The cast was long gone, and the pain from that terrible October night had faded to a memory he rarely thought about. A little bit, Maria admitted, kneeling to fix his tie. There are a lot of people here. They're nice people, Daniel said confidently, looking at the crowd. Not like the old ones. And look, Detective Garcia is here. He promised to show me his badge again. Maria smiled, watching her son run off toward the food table where the big SEC detective was awkwardly holding a plate of appetizers. Seeing Daniel fearless, that was the only victory that truly mattered. The company, the money, the reputation, it was all just protection to keep that little boy safe. The lights dimmed. A spotlight cut through the darkness, lighting up the stage. Maria walked up the stairs. The silence that greeted her now wasn't the heavy, judging silence of the trial. It was a silence of respect, of waiting. She gripped the sides of the podium, taking a moment to look at the hundreds of faces. She saw Emily Chun, her former court-appointed lawyer, now her general counsel, wiping a tear from her eye. She saw the board members of Rodriguez Biosciences, who now looked at her with scared respect. "Thank you all for coming," Maria began, her voice steady and amplified, filling the huge room. "A year ago," she continued, "I sat in a chair not unlike the ones you're sitting in now, though much less comfortable. I sat there for 3 days and listened to a man tell the world that I was weak. He told the jury and the press that I was silent because I was broken. He said my lack of fighting was an admission of guilt." She paused. The room was so quiet you could hear ice melting in glasses. "We live in a world that rewards loud people," Maria said, her eyes sweeping across the room. "We're taught that the person shouting the loudest is the one in charge. The bullies, the braggarts, the ones who interrupt. We're taught to fear their noise." She leaned closer to the microphone. "But I learned something in that courtroom. I learned that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes silence is the sound of loading a gun. Sometimes silence is building a trap. I stayed quiet, not because I had nothing to say, but because I was waiting. I was listening. I was gathering truth while he was busy shouting lies." A few people in the front row nodded. The connection was real. "Tonight, this foundation is a promise," Maria said, her voice rising. "A promise to anyone who feels trapped by a loud, powerful voice. We will help you find your own voice. And we will remind the world that truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to be heard at the right moment." The applause didn't just start, it exploded. It was thunderous, a standing ovation that shook the floor. Maria didn't shrink from it. She stood there, taking it in, accepting it not for herself, but for the woman she had been, the woman who almost let herself disappear. An hour later, as the party changed to soft jazz and people mingling, Maria found herself near the terrace doors. "Ms. Rodriguez," a rough voice said. "Or I suppose I should call you Madam Chairwoman now." Maria turned to find Judge Martinez leaning on a cane, a glass of sparkling water in his hand. He had retired 6 months ago. He looked older, softer without his robes, but his eyes were still sharp. "Maria is fine, Judge," she said warmly, offering her hand. "I'm glad you came." "I wouldn't have missed it," Martinez chuckled. "You know, in 40 years on the bench, I've seen every kind of liar, thief, and con artist. I've seen innocent men look guilty and guilty men look like saints. But I never saw a takedown quite like your." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You played a dangerous game, Maria, waiting for me to ask that specific question. What if I hadn't asked about October 14th? What if I had just signed the papers?" "I knew you wouldn't," Maria said, her face serious. "I did my research on you, Judge, just like I did on Robert. I knew you had a grandson the same age as Daniel. I knew you had zero tolerance for bullies. I just needed to make Robert angry enough to show you his real face. I needed him to threaten me. I needed him to lose control. You used his arrogance against him," Martinez said, shaking his head in admiration. "Judo, using the opponent's weight to throw him. He had the money. He had the power," Maria replied. "All I had were the details and the patience." "Well," Martinez said, clinking his glass against hers, "it worked. I hear our mutual friend is currently working in the laundry at Terminal Island Federal, making 12 cents an hour folding sheets. I'm told he's not adjusting well to the lack of room service. It's honest work," Maria said without bitterness. "It might be the first honest work Robert has ever done in his life." They shared a laugh, a sound of closure. "Go enjoy your party, Maria," Martinez said, waving toward the room. "You earned it." Maria smiled and slipped out through the glass doors onto the balcony. The rain had stopped, leaving the Los Angeles skyline clean and sparkling against the dark Pacific Ocean. The air was cool, crisp, and biting, so different from the suffocating air of her old life. She walked to the railing, gripping the cold metal, feeling the wind blow through her hair. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a builder. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out. It was a text from Dr. Anderson, the lead researcher she promoted after firing Robert's friends. Message 10:42 p.m. Subject, FDA update. Maria, we just got the call. Neurovance has received full approval. The safety data you released saved. Everything. We start making it Monday. This is going to change millions of lives. You did this. Maria stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in her eyes. Tears came to her eyes, hot and fast. This was the proof she hadn't realized she needed. Robert had used the company as his personal bank. She had turned it back into something that helped people. Her father's algorithms, her own careful record-keeping, her years of silence, it had all led to this. She looked down at the city streets below, tiny cars moving like blood through veins. She thought about the woman she used to be, the invisible archivist hiding in the shadows of a narcissist's ego, terrified to speak, terrified to move. She wasn't that woman anymore. That woman had died in courtroom 5A, so this one could be born. Maria turned back toward the warmth of the ballroom. Through the glass, she saw Daniel laughing, showing his drawing to a fascinated Detective Garcia. She saw her future, unwritten and wide open. The silence was over. It was time to make some noise. The end. Maria Rodriguez proved that the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one shouting threats. It's the one quietly taking notes. She turned her pain into power and her silence into a plan that destroyed a corrupt empire. Her story reminds us that no matter how trapped you feel, the truth is a weapon that no amount of money can silence forever. What did you think of Maria's master plan? Could you have stayed that quiet for that long? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please hit that like button. It really helps. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.